The mind quietly builds an image of itself as the author of its life story. It wants to believe that its achievements are the result of personal brilliance and that its struggles are either injustices or mistakes that should not have happened. This tendency is not necessarily malicious. It is simply how the ego organizes experience. But the consequence of this subtle narcissism is that we begin interpreting everything through the lens of personal importance. Events become about us. Reactions become about us. Even the unpredictable movements of life feel like they are directed specifically at us. Yet if we step back and observe life from a wider perspective, something very different begins to appear. The world is not revolving around any single person. Billions of people are moving through their own cycles of perception, habit, and circumstance at the same time. Each person feels like the central character of their own story. But from the outside, all of these stories are unfolding simultaneously like countless waves moving across the surface of a vast ocean. Each wave has its own shape and movement, but none of them control the ocean itself. This realization can feel humbling, but it can also be deeply relieving. Because if the universe is not organizing events around our personal narratives, then many of the things we take so personally were never meant to be personal attacks in the first place. A business fails not because the universe targeted one individual, but because economic cycles rise and fall. A relationship ends not because one person is uniquely flawed, but because two patterns of life sometimes move in different directions. A moment of rejection or embarrassment may feel enormous from the inside, but within the broader movement of life, it is simply one moment among millions. Consider how often ambition is shaped by invisible forces that have little to do with conscious intention. A young professional decides they want to become successful in their career. They work late nights, compete with colleagues, and constantly measure their progress against others. At first, it feels like pure determination, but if they pause and reflect honestly, they may begin to notice how many influences quietly shaped this ambition. Perhaps they grew up hearing praise only when they achieved something. Perhaps their culture celebrates wealth and status as symbols of worth. Perhaps social media constantly displays the highlights of other people's lives, creating the impression that everyone else is moving faster. The ambition feels personal, but the fuel behind it often comes from cultural conditioning. Now imagine that same person reaching the milestone they once dreamed about. The promotion arrives, the income increases, recognition appears. For a moment, there is excitement. But then something surprising happens. The satisfaction fades faster than expected. The mind begins